The following will contain spoilers for possible Disney movies and shows. Thank you for watching. Hello everyone, this is Dragon Videos, ready to present another segment for Romance Month. And if you're wondering how Cinnamon, Artemis, and Loki Pan are doing after the last stuff I had to be reviewing, well, Artemis is trying to get ready for his date with Anastasia. Cinnamon is getting over it. As for Loki Pan, he's gonna get there, but first he needs to get over what had happened in My Hero Academia. Don't ask, it would take too long in this video. Anyway, for Romance Month, I'm going over some couples as a refresher. More importantly, I'm going over Disney couples. So, of course, you're all familiar of how Disney has a very interesting take on romance. Usually, it's simple and cute and over the top, as you would see in rom-coms or older romance novels. But you have to give Disney some credit of trying to set up some realistic or interesting relationships. For this list, I'm going to go over couples that are unique in their own perspective, whether it's through their interaction for each other in a very long run of things, or just of how they bring out the best of each other, one way or another. And again, there will be some spoilers, so you may want to watch these before you may go through the list. Oh yes, and one more thing. I am well aware that the Disney Princess franchise kind of has a little bit of some controversial issues in regards to how the situations are being handled in the movies. If you don't like some of the Disney princesses I provide, then feel free to skip ahead. Without further ado, let's begin Top 10 Disney Couples. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I am starting off this list with the best pairing in the Owl House couples, though we've yet to see more later on. Anyway, it focuses on our favorite characters. You see, Luz is our favorite bisexual Latina who is very creative, but seems that her creativity gives her trouble even though she's not looking for it. It resulted her in trying to go into summer camp, but instead goes to the demon realm in order to learn magic from Ida, the rebellious owl lady. As for Amity, she came off as a bit of a two-faced jerk who was very disrespectful to Willow, as well as pushy around Luz. However, after episodes 9, 5, and 14, we definitely learned that there's a lot more to Amity than we think. She's just emotionally vulnerable to the social pressures that are given by her parents, as well as given by her family. And in a lot of ways, these two have a lot in common. As for Luz, she practically goes out of her way in order to help Amity face her fears in the face-off at Grom. I mean, heck, they even did a enchanting dance, which is practically the pinnacle of that relationship, as well as animation itself. Anyway, in terms of how they bring out of each other, Amity has someone she could lean on and express some of her vulnerabilities without being so ashamed to do so, which also helps her give some confidence in herself in a way where it doesn't feel like she has to put on her cold mask just to prove it. As for Luz, she has someone who could personally value her, as I've mentioned multiple times in my previous videos, but she also feels like she can be normal around someone for a change, and actually someone worth fighting for. So yeah, these two have a great relationship, but it's still in the crush process, so it may not be confirmed until later. I mean, true, we've had a lot of Lion King couples, but I feel like going through this couple is probably a little bit refreshing and probably the most underrated. Duchess and O'Malley really are a very interesting pair, not only as the opposites attract, but they're kind of like Lady and the Tramp in the cat world. So you have Duchess, a very rich and upright cat who was raised by her rich human. She's very affectionate and just wants everyone to be happy. Unaware to her knowledge is that she was mostly focused on trying to raise her kids to be proper civilians, if you will. But unbeknownst to her, she was heir to the fortune, resulting in her being kidnapped by her servant Edgar, as well as being tossed into the unknown, where she almost got killed. But there was one upside to that unfortunate circumstance, and that would be Thomas O'Malley, a very wisecracking street cat who definitely helped Duchess trying to get through the rough streets of France while trying to get back home. These two seem to have a very interesting dynamic. O'Malley definitely helps Duchess try to be a little bit more realistic in their goals, while with Duchess, she seems to bring out some of the more caring and tender sides to him that he isn't so afraid of, even up to the point where he almost got himself killed trying to save the family from being sent away to Africa. So of course, O'Malley and Duchess really are a very well thought out couple. I put them number 9 because they're a bit underrated, though we've only had a short time of exploring this in a very old film, and not many people may even remember them now. But I felt like they deserved to be mentioned on this list because they just have an interesting chemistry that is not as well known as Lady and the Tramp. Okay, this adorable pairing could not be ignored. Sally and Jack are probably one of the few claymation couples you'd actually see in ever. So with Jack, he kind of feels like he's missing something. You see, he always does Halloween so many times, he doesn't know what he wants to do anymore. So yeah, sometimes when you do the same routine over and over, it's kind of understandable when you want something different in your life. As for Sally, she also is sick and tired of always having to be inside where she wants to explore the world. And Jack seems to be that kind of perfect window for her. And for a while, she wasn't sure if she was ever gonna be with him because he was so focused on the latest thing, he didn't seem to even notice her. But make no mistake, their interaction with each other is pretty interesting. Sally tries her best to reason with Jack, as well as try to get him to listen to her side of things, which I'm pretty sure wasn't easy. But even despite being shoved away, Sally still wanted to help him. And I put them in number 8 because it's sweet, simple, but it's very short at the same time. I do wish these two had more screen times. Heck, I wish they even had a spin-off series from this beloved Tim Burton classic. This would have explored furthermore into their relationship, as well as just show more about their dynamics with Jack's gentleman nature and Sally's dainty petite ways. This couple may come off as a bit strange, especially with the quote-unquote age difference between the two. I mean, even when they first met, it definitely felt like it was gonna be extremely awkward and weird. Kita's supposed to be thousands of years old, while Mile is probably in his 20s, maybe late 20s. Anyway, they both have a very interesting story and share a same sort of trauma. You see, Milo's parents died a long time ago, so basically he had to be raised by his grandfather and had to deal with the concepts of Atlantis that his grandfather shared with him, even though no one else believed him. Milo was practically alone in the world, practically gifted with understanding languages and cultures, probably better than anyone else in his time. As for Kida, she lost her mother to the crystal when they were trying to save Atlantis from going through a major natural disaster. Even though these two are from very different worlds, Kida definitely sees Milo as a special somebody who definitely is worth listening to. As for Kida, Milo seems to take some value of her as a person, as well as just help her through some very difficult times that she's facing, not only just through her culture, but through the relationship that whatever was left of her father. So, in some ways, Milo was Kida's only hope, not only for the people of Atlantis, but also a hope for her that maybe she could finally move on from the pain that she was stuck with for so many years. Now, even though we've had Back to the Surface Atlantis DVD thing, and it didn't exactly work as well as we'd hoped, it would have been better off as a series if they had taken the time to do so. It would have helped give more support to both of their dynamics, Kida's very wild Amazon strength with Milo's knowledge and expertise on myths, mythologies, as well as understanding linguistics that help Kida adapt to the surface world while helping Milo become stronger by practically risking his life to save her. Giselle comes off as your Disney princess stereotype. Cheerful, optimistic, very sweet and caring, kind of like everything you'd expect from a Disney princess. However, when she encounters Edward, she never had counted on an instant marriage, as well as encountering the evil hag, which is supposed to be her future stepmother, thus resulting in her getting a literal reality check when she's thrust into New York City, where she finds herself into a whole new situation. And despite being discouraged, she still tries her best to overcome a bad situation and make it her own. But even when she had a hard time, she was not without finding company, which turned out to be Robert, who is a divorce lawyer. She definitely comes into her life crashing, or falling in this case, from a sign where she wanted nothing more than to find her way back to Edward. And in doing so, she practically tried to help him find the best things in life. While with Robert, he's a single father trying to overcome his own issues, as well as trying to get his little girl to get used to the outside world. He's a no-sense man and a divorce lawyer, I guess that's what he does. Anyway, when Giselle kind of comes into his life and wants him to be happy and perky, he wasn't exactly up for it. But little by little, he opens up to her and finally overcomes some of the feelings he had about doubting that he'll ever find love again. Even through the dance so close, we got to see the awesome chemistry between the two. With Giselle, she feels like she's more evolved as a person. Not only just because she's expressing more emotions such as sadness as well as being angry for the first time, but she also helps Robert with always looking at other opportunities and trying to go beyond the box. These two opposites probably have more dynamics than we can give granted for. I mean, when Edward finally came and followed her to New York, she began to question of what it really means to love someone. I mean, sure, we've always had the Disney stereotype, and that's probably one of the things we like about Enchanted. It kind of makes a fun at the stereotypes, but without going over the top. But anyway, Robert really cares for Giselle, as well as Giselle cares for him. Robert's stirred and focused nature helps Giselle cope with some of the hardships that New York has to offer, while with Giselle, she helps him try to be a better father. Like, he didn't exactly give a very good present. A book about historical women to a 7-year-old, not exactly ideal. While with Giselle, she has someone who can help her cope with certain things. But as well as Robert having that best moment. Without a doubt, these two are a great couple. So in the beginning of the series, Jane kind of comes off as your stereotypical damsel in distress. In the beginning, she comes off as something you would probably, as a nostalgia critic would say, dumbass in distress, always screaming, frantically getting fussy, and it definitely felt like she would always get herself in peril, which definitely seems to happen a few times, especially in the Tarzan series. But make no mistakes, she does get a little bit better. And to be fair, she's in Africa, where she is from England, so she wasn't sure about how civilization works in Africa. As for Tarzan, he comes off as a savage brute to her, someone who was raised by gorillas, and understanding what it means to have another human being come into play was definitely an enigma. Upon their encounter, though, a lot of interesting concepts put into play. For Tarzan, he starts to learn a bit more about the human world. The very place he officially came from had not his parents been killed by a leopard. But as well as Jane kind of has an transformation of her own. She starts to become less reliant on her corsets and 1800s get up and becomes a little bit more open to the jungle and begins to appreciate the nature. Overall, these two definitely have a very strong dynamics in how they play things. Even in the Tarzan series, they have a good chemistry with one another of overcoming obstacles together. While Jane helps Tarzan with how to be a proper human, Tarzan helps her get through some of her wild sides and understand of what it really means to appreciate nature, become part of it. I feel like these deserved a better nomination on this list. Let's just hope that there'll be more of this in the future. So y'all know the story about Aladdin at this point. He was basically a very rogue street rat who tries to do everything he can just to survive the harsh streets of Agrabah, though people always gave him a very hard time whenever he stepped into a room. Whether you be a royal or you would have to be a regular commoner, he would always be viewed as nothing more than scum. But the thing is, with Aladdin, he has a heart of gold. He would always put himself in front of others. He would always put others before his own needs in order to complete what he needs to do. He's selfless, but sometimes he kind of has a hard time with trying to see that in himself, which is understandable considering that he's been giving nothing but credit all his life. And the only way he felt like he could get respect was getting gold out of a deal. I mean, that's basically no different with Jasmine. We've seen in the movies of how everyone treated her because she was a princess and a hot one at that. But the thing is, Jasmine is strong-willed as well as fierce. It's understandable of how frustrating her situation is of dealing suitor after suitor who would only treat her as a living purse and not a regular person with feelings. As she had said before, I'm not a prize to be won, and I'm pretty sure a lot of women can relate to that situation. But that's also another thing with Jasmine, is that not only she's strong-willed, but she's very willing to do the Empire. If some of you had seen the remake of Aladdin, with the one with Will Smith. But one of the things that I do appreciate about the two is how they overcome those differences and why they just make a great couple. With Jasmine, she feels like she has a bigger view with how Aladdin treats her and finally feels like she can express her opinions in a way where she's not shut down. As for Aladdin, he feels like he has someone who could actually see him for who he is as a person and actually loves him, gives him genuine love despite the class difference between the two. And this is why I put them in number 4, because they just have a very strong dynamic with each other. They're both fierce and kind, and they are probably the perfect rulers for Agrabah. Ah, yes, this charming and iconic couple when Disney comes to mind. They had been very famous throughout the age of a Renaissance, not only through the animation, but also because of just how wonderful the relationship is, especially on this French-based fairy tale. Actually, Beauty and the Beast is one of my favorite— Hey! What did I just say about it? I know there has been issues with this couple, but please get off. Thank you. I swear, what you just witnessed are some of the controversial goblins that like to roam around these parts. So, if you see something like this happening, that will be them, giving me a headache. Anyway, let's continue here. So one of the frustrating things it's like with Beauty and the Beast, it's always that controversial issue. Anyway, with Belle, she's a very down-to-earth intellectual person. I swear she and Jasmine must meet at some point and become good friends because they both have the same problem. They seem to attract the wrong kind of men. In Belle's case, it was Gaston. It doesn't exactly help when everyone in her village sees her as a funny girl. Even in the 2017 remake, we got to see that of how much of an outsider Belle was, which definitely shows a lot of frustrations Belle has to deal with day in and day out. So, of course, we have Evermore, which presents the Beast's psyche, who falls in love with Belle because not only does she see her sees him for who he is, but also because she was the only one who was kind to him in a way that he never had in the past. Upon reflecting of how far the relationship had come from being a prisoner and a owner of a castle to something more, it definitely shows a very nice evolution. And upon realizing of how much the Beast loves her, he lets her go because he respects her feelings as well as understands of how much that her father means to her. And that just says a lot about the relationship. So say what you want about Beauty and the Beast. This iconic couple just shows that if you look beneath the surface, there's always gonna be a special person inside, the one that is meant for you. And this is why I put him in number 3. Even if it comes off as a little toxic at times, it still shows that they still have a very loving relationship. They share and respect each other's feelings. They go beyond what's beneath the surface and actually respect each other for who they are, not just as a beast who traps a young woman against her will, but as someone who is willing to put the life for her. I feel like out of all the Disney princesses, Tiana can be very relatable to people who are hardworking. She works really hard to achieve her dream. No shortcuts, no nothing. She even doesn't want to find love. She just wants to achieve her dream of owning a restaurant. As for Prince Naveen, he definitely comes off as the chauvinist playboy who just wants to mess around but has to get married, otherwise he won't have enough money to support himself after his family financially cut him off. So, he finds himself with the voodoo guy and all hell breaks loose. But on one fateful night, the two of them encounter each other in the most weirdest way possible. And Tiana was definitely in for a shock of her life upon meeting Naveen, and asked for a huge adventure that was never even possible, not even in her own imagination. Slowly but surely, she starts to fall for Naveen, while she teaches him how to be more responsible and more self-reliant. Naveen helps her try to loosen up a little bit and feel better about herself and try to have fun. And once they became human again, they start to have more of that relationship. Naveen helps Tiana achieve her dreams of owning a restaurant in New Orleans, as well as help her become independent. As for Tiana, she finally has someone to look forward to in her life. Aside from working her butt off all the time, she finally has a love life who respects her ideas and her driven personality, as well as just helping her feel like she can have a chance to feel loved and be loved after her father died. So of course, Tiana and Naveen are just one of the sweetest couples and an inspirational one where you can't help but feel like this is one of their life goals. And rest assured, they're gonna have their own TV series soon called The Princess and the Palace. I definitely would like to see of how much their relationship evolves after that, which is why I put them in number 2. Of course, I'm gonna finish it off with this couple. They are probably a very quirky couple in their own right, usually because of just how things are. Many of you are also familiar with the grim fairy tale Rapunzel, which definitely has a more Disney fluff to it. But one of the things I do appreciate is just of how supportive they are, as well as just of how out of all the couples, they seem to have the most amount of growth in the entire Tangled franchise. Let me recap. So, you see, with Rapunzel, she comes off as a bit of a sheltered princess thanks to Mother Gothel, who kidnapped her when she was a baby and tried to use her magic golden hair. Rapunzel wanted nothing more than to explore outside her doors, but the way that Mother Gothel treated her definitely made her discouraged against going outside and feel the grass and experience things that normal girls would usually do. However, things change when Eugene literally comes crashing into our tower. But it wasn't exactly what she had in mind. Eugene definitely had more than he bargained for, being a chauvinist thief going by the name of Flynn Rider. Thankfully, though, Rapunzel wasn't extremely trusting of him at first. She definitely showed she was no dummy, and Eugene definitely was trying every single trick he could to try to shake her off and take the crown for his own desires. However, as they progress forward, we definitely learn that Eugene has been troubled in childhood, mostly being raised in an orphanage. And when the two finally reach the lantern ceremony in Corona, the two of them finally feel like they have a special relationship. Rapunzel finally feels more confident in herself and actually has more sense of identity than she could possibly have, and feel happy being outside in the world she knew. As for Eugene, he feels like he doesn't always have to be a thief in order to get what he wants out of life. All he just needed was love. So, of course, we've had the series Tangled, and we definitely see that their relationship continues blooming forward in the process. The duo definitely helping out one another and being supportive. Eugene being the voice of reason to the father, as well as trying to help Rapunzel whenever she's down in a very bad situation. As for Rapunzel, she helps Eugene adjust to a life that he never thought would be great, as well as looking beyond of what he views of himself as. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is it. Rapunzel, without a doubt, is the best couple. So, without further ado, this is basically the end of this couples video. Which Disney couple did you feel like was very important to you? Feel free to share your opinions, and also remember to do a like, subscribe, and this is Dragon Videos signing off.